On Thursday night, curiosity got the best of me, and I couldn't resist the urge to watch the live-streamed body cam footage of the shooting at the mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. It was something out of a video game or a movie. I'm sure many of you have seen the footage yourselves. The guy just methodically mows people down. I obviously can't and won't show the footage here, but there were a couple parts that really stuck in my mind. At one point, an unarmed man lunges at the shooter and almost saves the day, but gets shot point blank instead. And the shooter continues, and he keeps stacking the bodies, and then when he's done, he walks outside the mosque, and he shoots some random passerby on the street. And as she's laying there in agony, he walks by and puts another one in her for good measure, and then gets in his car and runs her over on his way out. Needless to say, watching that footage made for somewhat of a ruined night, but I don't regret watching it. I want to know what scenes like this look like. I want to know what sort of danger the world can present any one of us on a moment's notice. And as gruesome as the scenes in this video are, it's not actually the gore that bothered me. It's not the blood, it's not the piles of bodies, it's not the sounds of death. What bothered me watching this video was the helplessness. I was watching a guy work through dozens of people in an enclosed area who are completely and totally outmatched. They just have to sit there and wait their turn. That is what bothered me. The complete and utter helplessness of innocent people. It was a painful demonstration in exactly why human beings must have the right to self-defense, and specifically to be armed pursuant to that right. Not can have that right, not should have that right, must have that right by default, not by award or by grant from the government. It is the only hope for justice in scenarios like this. And I know every time there's a case like this, I'll hear, oh, don't politicize it. Now's not the time. Why not? I reject the idea that it's some moral failing to observe the basic atrocity that was this grossly unfair fight, and to hope for a future in which good people are better equipped to fight back. Besides, every time this happens in the US, there's no shortage of people opportunistically calling for gun control. In fact, they often say it's the ideal time to do so. If immediately after a shooting is the ideal time to talk about gun control, I will not be shamed in saying let's talk about the fundamental right to self-defense instead. Regardless of perspective on guns and self-defense, I think we can all agree with that basic assessment of the gross unfairness of this fight. You have the shooter with all of the power and the victims with none. And what we argue about is how best to equalize that power. But we do share that goal: how to make this a more fair fight, how to give those innocent people a better chance for survival. We differ on the methods, but let's consider our options rationally. If you take the perspective that trying to disarm everybody is the best way to equalize that power, I don't know what more you would want under New Zealand's system. You have to be licensed in New Zealand even to possess a firearm. You need additional endorsement to possess so-called military-style semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. These licenses are given only to those deemed fit and proper by police, after a background check which includes interviews with family and neighbors and friends. You must demonstrate to the police that you can provide safe storage for your firearms. You must pass a written test about gun safety and law. Whether any of this is actually effective is debatable. Even though murder is a very rare crime in New Zealand, most of the gun murders are committed by killers who, surprise, surprise, did not bother getting police permission to arm themselves. But here's the kicker. In New Zealand, the purest reason to arm yourself is actually disqualification from doing so, at least as far as the police are concerned. Arming yourself is, of course, by police discretion and not by right, and astoundingly, intent to use firearms for self-defense is actually a disqualifier, according to police. Straight from the police explainer on the New Zealand Arms Code, self-defense is not a valid reason to possess firearms. The law does not permit the possession of firearms in anticipation that a firearm may need to be used in self-defense. That is exactly backwards. Self-defense is the most justifiable reason to possess a firearm. It's not about the recreation of hunting or target shooting or any of the other crap the police talk about in this document. It's about your fundamental right to self-preservation, to preserve your life, liberty, and property as well as that of others when someone shows up at your door to kill you in cold blood and the police are still 15 minutes away. My point is this: if we're supposed to accept the premise that we can ban our way to equalizing this fight, What more could New Zealand have done in this case? Ban murder? They did that. Regulate access to weapons? They did that. Specially regulate the semi-automatic weapons this killer used? They did that. Tell these helpless people at their place of worship that bearing arms to protect themselves is a violation of the law? They even did that. The only conceivable next step is to ban firearms outright. But is it reasonable to expect that law will finally be the one that stops this shooter, given the long list of existing laws he had no issue mowing right through, just like the innocent victims at this mosque itself? If I can't convince you on the philosophy of the fundamental right, that you have an inalienable right to self-defense and just and humane governments will not infringe it, perhaps I can convince you on the practicality, on just the most realistic solution to this problem. Is it more realistic to try to ban weaponry such that crazy like this can't access it or buy it or build it or just jury rig it in any of the infinite ways under the sun? Or is it more realistic to let good and decent people prepare and equip themselves for the unfortunate but permanent reality that evil exists? The answer may in fact have been demonstrated within this case itself. There were 2 mosque shootings, the one that was live streamed in which the victims were helpless, some 30 people were killed there, and the second was at another mosque in which 10 people were killed, but reports say a mosque worshiper returned fire with a rifle or shotgun as the attackers fled in their car. He was heard telling police he had fired in self-defense, no word on if police informed him. That is not actually a valid reason to possess a firearm. Now, of course, there are a lot of details that remain to be discovered. I can't claim that being armed in self-defense was the definitive and singular reason why one mosque suffered less damage than the other. But isn't it a relief that at least one mosque had a chance? I don't want to ever watch another live stream like this one again, but I know it'll happen again, because the evil that'll do it is a permanent feature of the world. You can't ban evil, but you can prepare yourself for it, and you can challenge it when it confronts you. We've tried diminishing that right over time, and guess what? It doesn't stop the evil. So maybe let's try protecting it, maybe even expanding it instead. After all, I don't know how it can get much worse than what we all just watched. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.